Hello, I want to welcome you to another episode of Recovery Today. My name is Perry Gadurgis, the host of this show. This show is sponsored by the Recovery Resource Center here in Salisbury, Maryland. We've been on the air for 3 years now, and I've been hosting for the last 2 years. The show is also available on the YouTube channel. So as you watch the show and you think of other folks that might want to see this, know that you can go to the PAC-14 YouTube channel and be able to see this show, as well as all the past shows. So in this show, we explore different pathways of recovery, different experiences of recovery, and from different points of view. And our guest today is someone I met 6 years ago, and I want to welcome Alana Martin to the show today.
Hi, Perry. Thanks for having me. I'm incredibly grateful for this experience.
Cool. So would mention that we met about 6 years ago at a candlelight visual, honoring those who had lost their lives to addiction and overdose, and got to meet your husband, Gary, and felt a real connection to you guys, as we usually do with people in the recovery community. And I know you and Gary are really committed to helping the still suffering addict person suffering from substance use disorders. And I'd like you to talk about why you do this kind of work.
So like we talked about earlier when we were going over this, it started for me at a very early age. Around 11, I started smoking cigarettes, and then 12 and 13, like I was smoking pot and drinking alcohol. And then that just kind of got, me into that kind of crowd, hanging out with the older people, trying to be cool, so on and so forth. So by the time I was like 15, 16, I was just completely out of control. I had, been molested a couple times by then. I was just living horribly. I was lying, cheating, stealing. It even got to the point, where I was selling my body to whoever had the most drugs in their pocket. And the end of my road was, almost killing my little sister. I woke up the morning after that and just had such a deep, dark depression and hatred for myself. And I remember saying, I can't live like this anymore. I can't do it. And that was my bottom almost 13 years ago. October 17th, 2007, I walked into the doors of a treatment facility, and knock on wood, relapse isn't a part of my story. I've been clean from drugs and alcohol ever since, and I truly believe that my higher power's calling for me. What he wants me to do is try to help, anybody that I possibly can, and this is a great way to do it. I'm so glad that you do these shows. I've seen many of them. Just that's why I don't hold anything back. I don't have any worries about saying who I was or what I've been through, because it absolutely can, and I hope help somebody,
Yeah, and we've talked about this before too, the whole thing of stigma. And I know you're a peer recovery supervisor and had been at the Hudson Center, and more recently you're in transition to work in some other capacity somewhere else doing this kind of work. And so you were involved with a project about a year ago or two that was raising awareness and to not stigmatize addiction. Do you have anything to share about that?
Yeah, that was a really great experience, because like I'd said, for me, I don't hide anything. If you would have met me 13 years ago, you never would have guessed that, this is the person, who's in front of you right now. And that's what is kind of sad sometimes is the ignorance of it. And I don't mean ignorance as a derogatory term, but just not knowing, a lot of people don't know us and don't know who we really can be. They just judge us by our past, unfortunately, and like I said, all those things that I had done before, you never would have guessed that now I'm a wife and a mother, and, I'm a productive member of society. And I've met people, through a hiring process when I used to work at Dollar General, who would say, wow, because I tell everybody, I don't hold anything back. It doesn't, I'm not ashamed. I have no guilt. Who said I would have never imagined that, because we're not dictated by our past mistakes. Our past does not define us. What we do today and the choices we make today are what define us. And I just want everybody to know that and hear that. We're not bad people. We just make some bad choices sometimes.
Yeah, and then some do go into the criminal justice system like myself, though prison did end up saving my life back in the 70s. And so, you know, I'm in decades of recovery and have gone back to prisons and done that kind of work. And how sometimes our society can get caught up a little bit about defining a person by their past mistake. And yet, one thing is people aren't mistakes. And our brains are hijacked if you suffer from substance use disorder or mental health challenges. And we do know in the prison systems that we have a high population of people that suffer from substance use disorders and led to their criminal behaviors that ended up behind bars. And yet we know too, recovery works and it's treatable. And you're a perfect example of that.
Yeah, that's what I just try to show people and tell people, you know, again, like we had talked earlier, I've done a couple, you know, magazine interviews and newspaper interviews and stuff because I'm not ashamed at all. You know, my family loves me, my church family loves me, my recovery family loves me. You know, I have all these different people in my life that know who I really am. You know, those things that I did in the past was not who Alana really was. This is the Alana Martin that I was meant to be the entire time. Yeah.
The former drug czar for the United States has a saying that he said quite frequently. Michael would say, it's hard to hate up close. It's hard to hate up close. And so, yeah, we need to humanize this and let people know that recovery is possible and let families know that families can heal. And speaking of families, as that's part of the sort of consequences of active addiction, anything to share about how family has changed for you from, as you mentioned, your sister and where life is now with family?
Yeah, I've learned through a lot of different experiences and through a lot of other people's experiences that sometimes, because we hurt a lot of people, we hurt ourselves and we hurt a lot of people, you know, when we're actively using drugs and alcohol, you know, that some relationships take longer to heal than others, you know. In all honesty, there's one relationship, even 13 years later, that I am still distant from making amends to that because it was very brutal, you know, the things that I had done. You know, so I just tell people that we have to let, you know, we have to let them have their own process too. They let us have our process, you know, so they have to have their process too. And, you know, hopefully if it's meant to work out, it will. Fortunately for me, you know, my blood family and whatnot has just welcomed me completely. Like I said, my little sister is my best friend. Both my parents are in a recovery process too. So we also get to bond on that level as well. And my family just supports me and loves me for who I am today, you know. And a lot of my family comes to anniversaries that I have because I'm a part of a self-help group as well. My little sister has only missed one, and that's because she was in Florida at college. How selfish is that? You know, she had to go to Florida for college, but she's back now. But yeah, family is very important. And you know, we had talked a little bit earlier too about the different kinds of family. You know, I have a recovery family. I have a church family, and I have my blood family, and all those relationships are very, very important in my life. And one quick saying, I could talk forever about recovery, is that, you know, oh, excuse me, it doesn't, you know, none of that, you know, past stuff matters. It's not who we are or who we used to be. It's what we're doing now that defines us.
Yes, absolutely. And in that, we mentioned too about being married and how, and like myself, I met somebody in the program and we still had some trauma issues, both of us in the past, and we tried to navigate that. And in the end, and this was back in the early 80s, there wasn't as much resources available in what was really known about trauma work as there is today, in both professionally and even in the mutual support groups about the impact of trauma, particularly around addiction and mental health concern. So you're married to somebody in recovery. So what's that like for you? And
So, in all honesty, it is absolutely wonderful most of the time, and it is absolutely frustrating, the other part of the time, because we can get, getting into a little marital tip or whatever, and he'll be like, I think you need to call your sponsor, or when's the last time you worked on a step, which is frustrating, but good for me as well, because he can see things that I can't always see in myself. Just like in active addiction, people telling us that you have a problem, you need to go to treatment, so on and so forth. We didn't see it. Oh, we got this, we're okay. The things, that our brains can tell us. So it's definitely for me been an amazing gift to be able to share that on a personal level with him as well. And the most important thing, like I want to add to, is that the only way that our relationship in recovery works is that he has his recovery and I do mine. When we go to meetings, 9 times out of 10 we'll sit separately, or even with the Zoom meetings, he'll sit in a different room, and I'm here at my desk or whatever. We don't do each other's step work. We don't read, step work to each other. It's very important because I am what's most important. I love him to death and he is my world, but he is not what's most important in my life. I love my little sister to death. I would take a bullet for her, but she's not what's most important. I'm what's most important, because if I'm not good and I'm not taking care of myself, then none of those other relationships matter anyway. So it truly has been a gift.
And you're a gift to the local recovery community. I know that for sure. And for those who watch this, because you're very inspirational. I mean, you've been to hell and come back. And some people would say recovery is like survived hell and found heaven, so to speak. I've had people say that in the past. And so as that process happens, you do have this other gift that as a peer recovery person, that you help people who are maybe just recently experienced trauma from their active addiction, or the family members of who've lost a child to overdose or an almost death. And so what do you say to folks who are maybe navigating that early recovery from your point of view, personally and professionally?
Yeah, so for me, like we had discussed earlier, it's really important to just meet them where they're at. I don't want to bring up things that are going to make it worse. And having all the past experience that I have had, if in active addiction, the things that I had done, plus in recovery, a lot of stuff, has happened. Life just doesn't stop happening because I get clean, the world does not revolve around Elena, even though I like to think it does sometimes, so suicide and overdoses and surgeries and, traumas of, friends' houses burning down, things like that still happen, in everyday life. So by having all those experiences, I can help somebody, hopefully, walk them through it and just, meet them where they're at. It doesn't, we have a saying in my self-help group that, there's no better weapon than, someone else who's been through it as well. And, for me, like if somebody comes to me, maybe they want advice about them being pregnant, what can they use or what can't they use, things like that. I am okay with guiding them to somebody else that can help them better with that situation, because I've never, had children of my own. So there's always somebody out there that has been through what an individual has been that can help them through that process.
Right, so you're describing connection, and some folks would say, professional folks in particular, that it's a disease of, or dis-ease of disconnection, and that the recovery journey, whatever way people experience it, has connection. They have somebody in positive regard that's holding them, or a whole huge community of that. And so as we wrap up now, with this episode, is there any last words you would say to folks that are watching this show, either on the YouTube channel or live as it's shown on our PAC 14 channel?
I think the most important thing to remember, or that I want to portray, is that it's absolutely possible. Our brains and society sometimes tell us that we're not good enough, that we're not worth it, that we can't do this. But if I can do it, anybody can. I've met people with, you know, not as bottoms as I've had, and I've met people with even worse bottoms than I've had, you know, that have gotten clean and stayed clean and sober no matter what. We just have to know that we are good enough. We are strong enough. We are capable, no matter what the negativity of our brains tells us. You know, every single one of us is worth it. We're amazing people when we have the, you know, the chance and the ability to be able to be ourselves. So, you know, don't give up and don't listen to the negativity that our brains tell us, because somebody out there loves you, you know, and somebody out there wants to help you be the person that you can absolutely become.
Wow, those are deep words of wisdom that, you know, hard earned and experienced. And I'm just super grateful for the work that you do here in our local community
Thank
and
you.
for agreeing to do this today. So I want to welcome again people to share this video if you're going to watch it through the YouTube channel, and know that the Recovery Resource Center still has, working with the health department, a safe station under the still current conditions of phase 1 here in Maryland. And so I, again, encourage you to share this and know that recovery is about thriving, not being a victim anymore, and it's about moving forward in life and paying recovery forward and passing it on. So thanks again for watching another episode of our Recovery Today.